with my counterpart, Brad Davis from Toyota North America. We're going to walk through lots of content, tons of things to tell you about today, but I thought I'd throw together a little agenda. First off, we're going to talk a little bit about why digital transformation is still so challenging. And the honest truth is it is really difficult still, even after all these years. After that, I'm going to share some lessons that we've learned working with lots of customers who are having big success in their digital transformations. So hopefully we can kind of take what we learned from them and share it with all of you. And of course, it wouldn't be reInvent without some launches. So let's have some launches. We'll do some launches there. And then we'll hear from Toyota. My counterpart here, Brad, will come up and talk a little bit about what they've done at Toyota North America. And I've also got another customer called NSG who's had some really great success lately. Really cool system they were willing to share with us. We've got a little demo of that, and I'll share with you what NSG is doing. And if you all stay to the end, we have an exclusive demo implementation of a Gen AI shop floor assistant, and that's really cool. This is sort of the leading edge, bleeding edge, and we wanted to share something with you that is immediately accessible. If you're interested in recreating something like that for yourselves, this is all open source, and we'll be able to give you a link to that at the end of the presentation. So if I have a hook to keep you to that last 59th minute, that's it. So, like I said, digital transformation, I mean, we've been talking about this for years. There was the advent of Industry 4.0. That was back in, the 90s that came out. Early 2000s, we really got serious about it. Later in the 2010s, we had a lot of sort of resurgence, new hope, because IoT was going to be the next big thing that really unlocked the Industry 4.0 promise of being able to be anywhere at your child's swim meet and use your phone to completely, act an alarm, dispatch a crew, and fix a running problem in your plant. But truly, it's still very difficult. I mean, the benefits of digital transformation are absolutely huge, and our customers are seeing big results. There's a lot of examples out there of people getting, huge gains on worker productivity. We've got a great example that I shared last year with Koch Industries, who's doing a fully connected worker program, digital twin. They're rolling that out to multiple sites now. Really great improvement in their worker productivity there. We've got, throughput increases, reduction of downtimes that are significant, really statistically significant, and have a big effect on the quality and the cost bottom line. And of course, then the cost of quality improvement as well. We see a lot of really great progress towards customers, meeting those types of business goals with digital transformation. But the truth is, we still see more than 2/3 of these transformation initiatives stall in just the pilot phase. And why does that happen? We have a number of theories, and today I'm going to share with you a lot of the conclusions out of those theories. But I think first and foremost, a lot of these digital transformations efforts fail because they're not aligned from shop floor to top floor. The IT/OT gap is still very real. And often these things start by somebody in the C-suite getting pressure from a board saying, hey, you need to modernize, you need to be digital, you need to have a digital transformation program. Or we see some really great pilots that start out of innovative people working on the shop floor, doing continuous improvement and gathering data and thinking big thoughts, but not having an outlet, not having a way to take that forward beyond their work center or their area or their site, right? So a lot of these things kind of get stuck. They also get stuck because of things like we didn't think about security up front. We didn't necessarily align it to our actual operational business goals. Even though we thought the technology was super cool, we didn't, feed this back into our lean management system, for example. So a lot of these things can really just die on the vine in that pilot phase, and they're not moving forward. But what does it mean to be truly digital? A lot of these things, again, they come out of multiple different aspects. Sometimes they're driven by IT. Sometimes they're driven by the OT, the shop floor people. We've got sustainability goals out there pushing us to think about how are we capturing our data? How do we know, how much carbon are we producing per ton of product that we're also producing? We've got security concerns. I talked to somebody this morning who said, yeah, I'm looking at doing shop floor digitization, but I still am not sure that I'm ready to go to cloud yet, right? So there's still some hesitation there. And in exploring why, there's a lot of problems, like the introduction of IT, this separation between the shop floor and the IT folks who need to think about standardized things across their entire operation versus the people on the shop floor who are saying, hey, is this going to impact my job? How's that going to impact my job? Is it going to make my job better or worse? Things like that. But ultimately, taking a data-driven approach and really thinking through your data maturity and thinking about how do I get all the data? How do I contextualize all that data? How do I use that to make real business improvements? That's when we start down the proper digital journey. And I think my definition, personally, is to be digital in this space, you truly have to bridge that gap between IT and OT to gain a really unfair advantage over other people who are not doing the same, right? And this might come from a productivity gain, a performance gain, sustainability gain, an efficiency gain. This is gonna happen, and we need to drive this forward. But it is gonna start by bridging that gap between IT and OT. So, what have we learned? Well, back when we started all this journey, we were kind of in traditional manufacturing, low automation, low data visibility, and we started censoring things. We started adding as many vibration sensors and heat sensors and trying to get access to the data of old machines, brownfield things, using things like Modbus and other protocols. But it's really challenging at that point. And again, this is why a lot of these things fail. It's hard to get machines connected. But as we've moved through, we've kind of moved to this spot where I consider, this is my own chart, by the way, my own view of the world, but we've moved to connected manufacturing. I'm not sure we're fully at smart manufacturing yet, but we are at least in connected manufacturing. That means we've got a reasonable level of automation, we've got a reasonable level of access to data, and we're starting to see the benefits of combining these and really thinking harder about how to make improvements. Looking for our biggest downtimes, things like that. Just quantifying little things like that to align better to business goals. But the promise of this could be much greater if we improve on the automation and we improve on our data maturity and really think about how to get that granular data, the contextual data that puts all of this into focus to tell us where our real problems are. We can move very quickly to something like software-defined factory or software-driven automation, things like that. And who knows, I hear a lot in the industry, in the press about lights out manufacturing. Whether you believe in that or not yet, we could be trending there as well. But if that's at least the ultimate goal, lights out manufacturing, how do we get there in a clean way? So AWS has built a portfolio, as you know. If you've seen me present in the past or if you've been to reInvent in the past, you know that we have a great suite of really foundational services. Things like IoT Core, IoT Greengrass, Kinesis video streaming. We've got Amazon SageMaker, managed Grafana to make nice dashboards, IoT device management, things like that. These things are general purpose and great for connecting equipment or machines, things like that. But when we move to really look at the customer problem and we started working backwards from those customer problems, we figured out that these services are foundational, and we continue to need those in our architectures, but we also needed to augment that with some of the things that are more like our experience pre-built patterns that we saw happening over and over, that customers were having to solve themselves. Things like hot, cold, and warm tiers data storage in the cloud. Common patterns for managing time series data, log file data, instant alarm data, event data, all those types of things that are not that common to a traditional IoT use case, but are super common to industrial cases. And it really doesn't matter what industry you come from. We're really blessed that we get to sit right at the nexus of people from food and beverage, oil and gas, mining, manufacturing, automotive, all sorts of different walks of life, all sorts of different parts of the economy, all having these same problems when it comes to managing data, gathering data, connecting to sources, making sure they can act alarms, helping them to really quickly get to issue resolution when there's a problem, and therefore, increasing uptime, decreasing downtime. So we've built these purpose-built services that take a lot of those common patterns that we saw into account. But where we've really hit our stride, I think, you've probably heard about this stuff in the past, where we've hit our stride is when we realized what our purpose was. We can't solve all of the problems out there. We're just not equipped. We're not in the machines, we're not in the PLCs, we're not in the drives. We don't have deep process expertise on, how do I optimize a dairy pasteurization or a clean-in-place process. We just don't have that expertise. What we do have is expertise on managing data in the cloud at hyperscale for multi-site, lots of connectivity, high volume, asset-intensive data. And when we brought all of this together, we started thinking harder about how do we really provide value to our customers. And it's really looking at these pre-built architectures, not just pre-built services or not just pre-built function blocks, but pre-built architectures for doing things like industrial data management in the cloud. And this is why our second lesson that we've learned that I can share with you, digital transformation is absolutely a team sport. Nobody can do this themselves. It's very rare that we find a company who has every single aspect and is able to do that. And if they do, it's very rare that we find a customer who says, yes, I'm going to lock in end-to-end with one single customer, provider, one single vendor. It creates risk, there's other problems. So really, we've taken this approach of saying, hey, AWS needs to act as a team. We need to work with a great partner network. We can build extensible applications together. We can think about how to provide these industry patterns, these common pre-built patterns that we can provide that we're kind of uniquely positioned to provide with our partners. And we can focus on things like cloud data management for industrial types of data as our kind of core value. So we've worked with partners in every sector, every walk of life, every aspect of from the silicon to the connection. We call it the first inch problem, getting data out of devices. There's all these, tens of thousands of industrial protocols from the last 20 years. We have equipment that was commissioned from site to site in different decades, depending on, perhaps when it was acquired, perhaps when it was built. And often these systems all have different original vendors, right? So we work with partners who know how to deal with that, who know how to connect to those things, and who can really think through where their value comes from. Companies like Kone, I know we've got Taro in the audience. Kone is building solutions for moving people. They're not just an elevator company, they're moving people. They're thinking big thoughts about how do we make office buildings more efficient? How do we make spaces more efficient? So Kone is a great example of this. You've heard us talk about Siemens. You've heard us talk about Accenture. What you might not have heard about is some of our other partners, some of our smaller partners who do huge things. A company like Embassy of Things that we're working with at Hillcorp. Hillcorp is a company that buys up well sites that are late in their life cycle. And so they're trying to maximize the remaining production out of these old well sites. As you can imagine, as a company model, this is an IT nightmare and an OT nightmare. All of these well sites have come from different companies. They often have different SCADA versions, even if it's the same company. They have multiple different historians, multiple different SCADA systems, and really no single source of the truth. So when Hillcorp came with us and Embassy of Things, their whole plan, their whole need was to get one source of truth, multi-site, quick visibility across their entire operation, across all these disparate SCADA systems, all these different historians. And Embassy of Things was able to help us with that solution. They rapidly they rapidly assimilated all these assets. They created a unified visualization across the entire operation. And by doing all of this, they actually managed to reduce their IT spend by a significant amount and increase their production because they had better visibility into what their wells were doing. We also worked with a company called ReplyStorm for our customer Kingspan. Kingspan is a big building company. They've got about 50 factories worldwide. And when they looked across their entire operation, it's the classic problem that I described. Multiple different systems, depending on when they were acquired, when they were built, when they were commissioned. And across 50 different factories, you can imagine when they tried to do an audit of where are we at, what does our supply chain look like, things like this, it took them 3 weeks to do. Reply Storm helped them build a much more data-driven application with a really great data foundation that was repeatable and common. That allowed them to cut their audit time from 3 weeks down to 3 minutes, which is really impressive. It created data-driven decisions that were not just at the shop floor, but all the way up to the board. And Reply Storm also helped them to make this very, very repeatable. So they had this IoT in a box solution that they can now deploy at new greenfield factories that they bring online as well. So great working with these partners. And I'm really excited today to talk about one of our partners that we've been working with over the last couple of months to make things really accessible, really easy. I talked about that first inch problem. It's very difficult often dealing with so many different types of industrial protocol. And that first inch problem, getting the data off the device, is something that is one of the main blockers of moving digital transformation forward. So we've partnered up with EasyEdge by Dematica to bring 10 newly supported protocols into our SiteWise Edge offering. And this means now we can support Modbus, MQTT, KNX, the Siemens S7, Profibus, Profinet, Ethernet IP, LoRaWAN, and even RESTful APIs. So this is pretty cool. This is now available today. We launched this on Sunday, and it allows us to more quickly connect to all those brownfield machines. One of our very first customers who used this was Siemens Energy. This is his quote. He said, "It's a game changer to connect more brownfield assets in less time and at a lower cost." So we're really excited to talk a little bit about Dematica and our machine connectivity framework. Another relationship we would have heard about, lots I'm sure, in the last couple of years, we've had Siemens on our keynote stage talking with our CEO, Adam. And so you know that we have this very fruitful and very good relationship with Siemens. And this is our premier partnership really for that really end-to-end, working with an automation provider who's also able to provide the applications, the industry knowledge, the deep expertise that we need when we're doing this as a team sport. Back at Hanover, if you weren't at Hanover, you might have missed that we actually launched a brand new solution called Lean Daily Management. And this is with Mendix, a combination of Mendix with our digital twin product called IoT Twin Maker. Lean Daily Management allows people on the shop floor to really quickly connect across multiple disparate systems, get that visualization into a twin, be able to create items and visualizations, and do it all with the Mendix low-code environment so they can quickly access their data. This allows them to cut that data acquisition time from, again, weeks to a couple of hours, and really provide that contextual data up to that low-code environment. This is a game changer for the shop floor so that we can really bring that visibility quickly into the shop floor. So we're really excited back in Hanover to launch this Lean Daily Management Suite. I would really encourage you to go check it out. There's a QR code on the side there, and it brings together both the twin aspects along with that low-code aspect. Something else I'm really excited today to talk about, I think we launched this one on Sunday or Monday as well, but the SiteWise Edge from AWS is now available in preview on the Siemens Industrial Edge Marketplace. This is a really big deal, this one. For too long, it's been very difficult to bridge that IT-OT gap and to make sure that we can get data quickly out of machines and really move data from that machine edge up to the cloud and get access to things like machine learning. Think about multi-site auditability, traceability, sustainability programs, things like that. And often, really, Siemens being the leader on that industrial shop floor, the machine edge, and building in the edge, this is a great solution, but it's really been geared towards OT people. We have this great solution called Sitewise that allows you to contextualize data, analyze data, and really dig into your cause codes, things like that. And to bring these two together inside that same framework of this Siemens Industrial Edge is really game-changing. This allows us to connect those machines, those devices, all that data super quick, log that right up to Sitewise. This is available with a cross-marketplace interaction. And to learn more, I really encourage you to stop by this joint breakout session tomorrow. It's at Mandalay Bay. It's at 8:30 a.m., but we'll have Torben from Siemens and Nicola from AWS talk more about this solution and the power of having these two things working together. So really excited about this one today. And so Siemens and AWS, we continue to try to innovate, and we continue to look for things like, how can we use these industrial applications that were purpose-built for manufacturing, for automotive, for dairy, for food and beverage, things like this. Siemens has that as part of their accelerator portfolio. Mendix is a great tool that's now available also in the Siemens Industrial Edge, working again with Sitewise. We've got a Mendix to Sitewise connector as well. So you can now use Mendix, Siemens Mendix, in conjunction with IoT Sitewise very easily. Just download the connector. But we continue to innovate together, and what I really love about this is an end-to-end reference architecture of the two companies coming together. We've got the leader on industrial automation and, sorry, I thought there was a hand up there. The leader in industrial automation, working with us, a leader in the cloud, working on that hyperscale cloud management of your data, and really bringing this end-to-end architecture together. And we're going to continue to innovate for our customers and work together in this space because, again, IoT is a team sport. So digital transformation, this one's really obvious, but it's greatly accelerated when we have all the data. I know that sounds really silly. Of course that would be true, but it's so true, and it's so important to start looking at, how do we gather that data? Where is that data coming from? Do we have enough of the context data? Are we passing that up to the cloud, things like this, to do the deeper analytics? And one company that was working on this was Bristol-Myers Squibb. They had an objective to accelerate their business strategy, looking enterprise-wide, and really start to combine these systems. They had some of their data trapped in different Pi systems. I'm sure very useful to the site. Pi is a great system, but at the same time, not able to give them enterprise-wide visibility. So Bristol-Myers Squibb was looking for, end-to-end traceability and a single source of the truth. We worked a lot with Bristol-Myers Squibb and other customers in the last year, and we've really thought about, how do we get this data more accessible, more contextualized, and more quickly up to the cloud? And so today I'm also excited to talk a little bit about some of the enhancements that we've done for IoT Sitewise to help that. When we think about Sitewise being this cloud data management service for industrial data, we really thought hard about how do we represent data in the best possible way. And Sitewise uses models, these equipment models, asset models, to represent that data, make sure that it's consistent across system, things like that. But it was still very difficult, very, very manual to update these models, to create the model, and things like that. So we thought deep thoughts about these small incremental innovations that we could bring to our customers, but that make a big difference. So today it's exciting to tell you that we can now import asset models and hierarchies from existing systems, things like historians, SCADAs, things like that. And we can represent those now inside of Sitewise with very minimal amount of code. So we can import those models and use those. We've also created this concept of reusable components so that when you're trying to derive a new asset model or launch this at another site, another facility, we can do this in a very, very quick way, and even taking into account the variations that might exist site to site. We've also really spent a lot of our year thinking deep thoughts about one of our main customer pain points that we've heard a lot, which is, I don't want to pay the cloud tax. I'm already paying all this infrastructure and I'm building all this stuff locally and I've got a lot of data on-prem. And when I send all that data real time to the cloud, it costs a lot of money. So we've spent a lot of this year really thinking about, all right, how do we move data? How do we move those bits more effectively, more cost effectively? Thinking about different patterns and different things that we could do. So I'm happy to tell you that we've thought about this. We've launched something called adaptive ingestion that we believe will reduce the cost of moving data to the cloud by about 70%. And that's tested. So we've thought about this in terms of creating a warm tier where data is immediately accessible. We still have our low latency instant access time series streaming as well for any of those. And we still, of course, have real-time events, real-time alarms, things like that. But a lot of your data doesn't need to move in real time. A lot of that data is there for audit purposes. It might be there for daily production max mins. It might also be there as 15-minute interval data to help with your sustainability program, something like that. So when we think about 15-minute interval data, we can send that data to a warm store. We can do that 96 times a day instead of thousands of times a day. We can do all these roll-ups in the edge, thanks to Sitewise Edge. We can move all that data in a very, very optimized fashion to reduce the cost overall. And as I said, our results are around 70%, which is great. And we've also thought really deep thoughts, again, about now that I can get data up there quicker and I can do it much more cost effectively, how do I now get it out just as easily? And we realized we had a problem, that it was actually kind of difficult to get data back out of Sitewise if you weren't using one of our own tools. And so because we kind of recognized, hey, this is a team sport, and we want to make sure we're working with the best-in-class application providers and ISVs that are out there, we thought harder about making sure that this is available through simple query interfaces. So we now have a SQL-like interface that you can use to pull data from Sitewise. Seems like a simple thing. We probably already should have had that. But we have it now. So very excited to tell you about those. And this year we've launched around 15 new enhancements to Sitewise overall. So it's been a big year. All of them incremental, all very small, but they have a big impact overall. And for Bristol Myers Squibb, this is the quote from Bristol Myers themselves. But they've been able to extend the exposure and the consumption of the data scale beyond the personnel and the point-to-point solutions. They're getting true enterprise-wide visibility. And the long-term vision is now to enable additional use cases like predictive maintenance and things like that. So they're now looking at using this data along with some of our AI and ML models to do predictive maintenance and get more value out of their data. So I would like to now invite Brad, a real-life person who has done this digital transformation at Toyota. And while Brad's coming on stage, we've got a short video from Toyota on the field. Thanks, Brad.
Hi, my name is Steve Palmer.
My name is Nick Masilli.
Hi, my name is Lauren Maines.
I'm Corey Harmon.
I'm a skilled team member here at TMMK.
I'm a maintenance team leader in TMK1 Machining Maintenance.
I'm a maintenance field team member at TMMK.
My safety commitment is always wear a seatbelt while in the vehicle.
Safety commitment is to always ensure that my team members are performing their job safely.
And my safety commitment is to always follow lockout tagout procedure.
My safety commitment is to always be safe by choice, not by chance.
So this new system has really improved our troubleshooting process. Just by the simple fact that we can look at the data, the raw data coming from the machines, and actively see where issues are coming.
It's easier for me to find the root cause of the problem. Instead of looking at the symptom, you can pull up multiple sources of data from a machine to see what the problem is. It allows me to use proactive maintenance with real-time data and predictive anomalies so I can schedule work to be done during downtime. Also, with limited parts and lead time to get us parts, we can adequately use parts on a machine that we know is failing than to use on a machine that we think is failing.
From that data, we can see what the issue is and go and look at it right away before it breaks down.
Where production works 3 shifts during the week, this system allows me to troubleshoot without causing any downtime and allows me to plan work for the weekends accordingly.
So our focus line is T3 cam, and the OA on T3 cam since we've been doing this for the last month has went up from high 70s, low 80s to low 90s, high 80s. It's really increased the OA on T3 cam. So this system really does help schedule plan work when we can go in here and find severe alarms on these machines. That gets us proactive in going down to spare parts to confirming we have parts for these machines, the way we can go ahead and schedule them for weekend work. If we have all the parts, we have everything ready, we've got guys signed up for the weekend, we're going to go in that machine, we're going to investigate it.
All right. So, thank you, Mike. I am Brad Davis. I'm an engineering maintenance manager in Toyota Motor Manufacturing, Kentucky. Specifically, I work in the powertrain plant, so we build engines for Toyota Camrys, RAV4s, and Lexus ESs. So the people you just saw in that video, those are all my maintenance team members. And they were using a system that we built called Reliability Insight. So what I'm here to talk about today is our journey with Amazon Web Services and how they helped get us to where we can have that reliability insight system for our predictive maintenance. So Toyota as a company has been working for a long time in Industry 4.0 optimization, trying to develop new systems within the space, especially IoT worlds. Within manufacturing, and especially at TMMK Powertrain, our focus is on machine reliability. So back in 2020, with the maintenance organization's goal to create systems for machine reliability, we started the Maintenance 4.0 working group. So we created the vision of a hot topic, right? Data-driven decisions. But if you look at those 3 words, they're all 3 very important words. So data is we wanted to utilize our existing systems. So like many companies, Toyota has years of data collection systems for different types of data, for different types of equipment, and it all goes into servers and databases, but is never truly optimized for predictive maintenance. So we wanted to leverage that data and then for the Industry 4.0 systems. Next thing is driven. So our main goal is to empower our team members to make informed, proactive decisions to do the right maintenance on our equipment at the right frequency. And the last thing is decision. So leveraging the machine data and that driven mindset from our team members to increase productivity. So to increase productivity, our main goal was solid predictive maintenance systems. And predictive maintenance is important. So where we started our journey is that the vast majority of equipment downtime in Toyota comes from unplanned machine breakdowns. That's our unplanned corrective work orders up there. Where we're going through a solid predictive maintenance system is that we can do the correct planned maintenance on non-production time to prevent downtime during production, increasing our OA and reducing downtime. So this is where AWS came in. So we had a lot of data. We collect multiple monitoring parameters worth of data from our CNC equipment. So in powertrain, in the machining line, the area that you saw those team members in the video, we have hundreds of CNC machining centers. They mill, grind, drill, all of the heads, blocks, camshafts, crankshafts, and connecting rods for the engines that we build. So each piece of this equipment collects data from our FANUC CNC controllers as well as our PLCs. From there, that data goes to an edge gateway that converts that to the MQTT or OPC UA protocols, where it's sent to Greengrass, and then Greengrass sends it to SiteWise. So in our architecture, SiteWise acts as the data historian, as well as a unified namespace for all the other AWS services within this process. But that SiteWise data then goes to look out for equipment. So it gets there through SageMaker pipelines, pulling from Athena data tables built on the input data S3 buckets. But L4E gets input data and output data after the lookout for equipment processes that data, sends it back through, sends the inference results back through Lambda functions into SiteWise. So you see Maximo, IBM Maximo up there as well. So IBM Maximo is our enterprise asset management system. That's where we have all of our maintenance work order logs. So it's our CMMS. And being able to integrate that as input data into L4E, along with our SiteWise data, we're able to generate the reliability insights system that you saw in the video. So I'm going to go into a few of the dashboards within that system, kind of explain how our team members are actually able to use that to make their data-driven decisions. So the first is an area level view. So we have multiple lines in each area. You can see that the parts that I talked about up there, your blocks, your heads, your cams. So this is a quick overall view of an area. It's used by leadership mainly. It shows the current operation availability, your overall equipment excellence, as well as aggregated downtime. And the last column, which is the coolest, is how many abnormalities are detected within that line. So as you drill down into the line level, you get to see all of your assets with a few extra KPIs as far as cycle time and some mean time to repair and mean times between failures, some maintenance KPIs that help measure the results of your predictive maintenance systems. But these are all sorted based on if there is an anomaly detected on the equipment and how severe that anomaly is. And this is where our team members can click on the severe anomalies and start looking deeper into what that means for that piece of equipment. So this is a list of monitoring parameters. It's kind of a standard CNC machine layout. It includes servo axis temperatures, insulation resistance, average torques, max torque, servo health data, ultimately, that's coming from our FANUC CNC. And team members can see which of these, see the trend line of each of these parameters, and then they can select those and see a graphical trend over time, compare that to other machines, and use that as a troubleshooting tool. The next portion in this asset level view is the integration with IBM Maximo. So it is unplanned work orders, what has recently happened on the equipment. These unplanned work orders work as labels in L4E. So you see your equipment health index and your performance, but L4E recognizes that when we have a work order here, the current condition of all those monitoring parameters is indicative of unhealthy piece of equipment. So we've got a problem here. So when it sees that same pattern in all those monitoring parameters in the future, that's an abnormality. And that'll show up in the predictive insights. So that integration's great here as well, because as team members use this data, these trending, these predictive insights, they're able to create a work order straight from this screen and schedule that predictive maintenance on scheduled equipment downtime. So what all this means for Team MK Powertrain, the good stuff that's come from this. So in our focus area, we've been able to prevent over $80,000 worth of unplanned downtime and spare parts cost, being able to transition from unplanned to planned corrective repairs based on the predictive insights that we've gotten from L4E. In that focus line, the very first month that we started monitoring with this system, we were able to increase our operation availability 10% compared to the previous 12-month average. That fluctuates up and down, of course, because this is not the predictive maintenance, not the only solution, but it is, we continue to see an increased trend in our operation availability based on the usage of our reliability insights. And then within TMMK Powertrain, we've scaled this system to over 300 assets, but even bigger. So Toyota Motor North America has selected reliability insights as their regional solution for a predictive maintenance system in the Industry 4.0 space. So we're currently working with plants within West Virginia, Alabama, Tennessee, our vehicle plant in Kentucky and Texas. There's many working groups working together to scale this same solution across the North America. Give that back to Mike. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Yeah, so I want to thank Brad and also his counterpart Braden in the audience for creating this system and sharing it with us, because we don't often get that. There's a lot of trade secrets out there. There's a lot of sensitivity to data. There's a lot of process that is protected. So thank you for sharing that. We really appreciate it. So I've got just two more great examples for you. It looks like we're right on time. So. Digital transformation, I talked about this at the beginning. A lot of them, 2/3 stall in that first pilot phase. And what we find is that a lot of the time, if we go on and we talk to people and we say, all right, so what went wrong? It's kind of a postmortem. What do you think happened? And often the data that we gather at least says that people on the shop floor didn't necessarily understand the goals that were set at the C-level or vice versa. The C-level didn't necessarily understand something like what's coming out of Kentucky at Toyota enough to say, wow, we should adopt that regionally, right? So it's a big deal to really think through shop floor to top floor alignment. And really, what we find is that as soon as you align these business goals to the digital transformation, everybody kind of knows their job. And if you can put this into language that the shop floor understands, root cause analysis, lean management, things like that, you get a much higher success rate out of these digital transformation projects. A great example here is NSG. NSG is Nippon Glass. We've been working with their Industry 4.0 champion for a number of months, named Peter Lai. Peter wanted to be here. Unfortunately, he couldn't. So he's recorded a great video that we'll make available online. And I'll show you some of his screens as well. But NSG was they're a global leader in glass production, especially glass cord. And they were having a lot of troubles with breakage, a lot of product quality issues. They had a lot of downtimes that were kind of unplanned, unexpected. And they were trying to quantify and figure out what is happening. And so, of course, they turned to Peter to say, hey, you with all the data and all the fancy tools, tell us what's going wrong here. And so Peter created a unique solution here in fact, it's become a very common solution, but with AWS IoT Sitewise, working with Amazon Lookout for equipment, this is what Brad kept referring to as L4E, and hosted into these managed Grafana dashboards. As you can see, these dashboards are very complex, but what I really loved about this was, the visibility that they managed to gain. And Peter was able to give their board level and their C-levels direct data that everybody was looking at as one source of the truth. And my favorite screen is this one. This is where Peter, he talks a lot about we were trying to figure out where our quality problems were coming from, where our downtimes were coming from. So they managed to look at every root cause and create a Pareto chart out of that. And they started doing that so that they could say, all right, where are the biggest things that we should go investigate, stuff like that. But then they realized they needed more data, and they needed better metrics, and they needed to understand exactly what was going on in behind the scenes. So Peter introduced this lookout for equipment integration. And very quickly, you can see here, this is kind of their first oven, oven A, has very few anomalies. As he looked at oven B, tons of anomalies. What this screen is showing you is a complete difference between that oven A and oven B. And looking at where these were coming from, they needed to understand exactly what was happening through the entire process. What they figured out was, if I can jump to, there we go, they built a digital twin. And they started to monitor more tags in real time and really look through their entire process. And what you're seeing here is a combination, once again, of us being in a team sport. This is Matterport on the screen, giving a real-life, human eye relatable visualization, not just a cartoonish digital twin like I'll show next. But using Matterport, they can actually look and say, this is the exact place that this anomaly is coming from. And Peter was able to really quickly, whenever they had a kind of a thought about, hey, where's this issue coming from, he was able to very quickly add an additional point through TwinMaker of data coming from SiteWise, adding that point to TwinMaker, and then running that through this L4E integration to find out where their anomalies were happening. Peter's conclusion out of this, by the way, the one oven was acting completely abnormal. It was also burning a lot more gas than they predicted. And when it was benchmarked against its peer oven, or ovens of a similar size, the consumption was significant. So just by looking at all these root causes and starting to think through their data and really getting the context of all that data in the plant, they managed to save more than 100,000 pounds sterling, they're a UK company, 100,000 pounds in just 12 weeks by correcting that gas overconsumption. So something else I'm really excited to talk about today, we've made this generally available, but we've created a much tighter integration between IoT SiteWise and Lookout for Equipment. You heard Brad talking about this Lookout for Equipment and SiteWise integration, and some of our other customers like NSG, but unfortunately for them, it was a very difficult process. They had to extract data, there was a lot of coding to be done, they had to move data around, and honestly, these two services just weren't really built to talk to each other that well. So we spent a lot of time on this year. We went back and we looked at, okay, this is a common use case, our customers love this, let's make sure this works really seamlessly. And so we've created this really nice tight integration between SiteWise and Lookout for Equipment. You don't have to move data around anymore. You can use SiteWise to train these models. You don't have to do a bunch of code integrations, anything like that. You can just build models for the anomaly detection and get that predictive maintenance data back into IoT SiteWise. So really excited about this one. Again, an incremental innovation this year. We've got a lot of these little things that we've done just to make the systems that much better, but we're really happy with this one. Check out the session Thursday at 2:30 p.m. IoT203 to learn more about this and see it for yourselves. But again, Brad's demonstration plus Peter's demonstration, I think it shows the power of these things. And this is where Peter says they've saved in excess of 100,000 pounds in a remarkably short time frame. He tells me it was about 12 weeks by using these systems to benchmark that peer-to-peer. So obviously working in conjunction with our partners in the process and making sure we gather all that data, making sure that we have all the data that we need, treating IoT like a digital transformation and IoT like a team sport, and really thinking about, do we have enough data? All of these things have really come together in these use cases to help these customers. But don't forget, overall, the digital transformation in spite of its name, is not about technology. It doesn't matter what great technologies we provide unless the people on the floor are actually going to use it, and unless it actually starts solving business goals, and unless it actually drives performance improvement. So this is a very human-centric transformation project. And something that we thought deep thoughts about, our customers were coming to us saying, hey, Mike, we're hearing about Gen AI. We don't know how to use it in production. We're hearing that this could be a game changer. Have you thought about where you could use this, things like this? So we did our own surveys, and we really thought about our customers, and where the customers were going to benefit the most from using something like generative AI. And we came up in just a very few short weeks. One of my very talented engineers, principal engineers, Jiaji, created this in just a very few short weeks. And this is now available to you. I'll have a QR code at the end as an open source project. But what we thought of was, could we use generative AI to quickly diagnose an issue? For example, here, our cookie factory demo, which will be available to you, we have a misshapen cookie. So we can say, hey, what are some of the common problems that would cause a misshapen cookie? And it gives you a number of things like foreign material in the dough, excess production speed, uneven mixing, things like that could cause it. Suggested next steps, you might want to inspect things. You might want to check the temperatures. You might want to look at the controls. You might want to examine the dough ingredients and mixing process, things like this. So it's got, it's been trained on a large language model that says, hey, what are our most common root cause problems that could result in this case, a cookie deformation? In NSG's case, a glass cord break. In Brad and Braden's case, perhaps it's a parts failure or something like that. But we thought about how do we train these large language models to make sure that this is really useful locally. And we thought, all right, well, it's not just that. It's also, on that next step, I need to inspect. So can Gen AI kind of talk me through and walk me through how to quickly inspect this process to see what could be going wrong and to look at the different types of causes that might be culprits in this situation. So it walks through the data, it looks through the cookie former. Obviously, we use our digital twin to look at all the data in concert with each other, and we're using our nice graph view to kind of understand how the process works. And then we identify an issue, and we say, all right, fine, great. I see that there's an issue, but how do I mitigate the issue? How do I fix this issue? So possible to fix the temperature fluctuation, what should I do? And very quickly, it comes up with a list there of recommendations. But what's really cool about that is we can quickly, behind the scenes, inspect the source material. That large language model has been trained on documents, after all. So we can pull up the actual SOP for fixing the issue. We can look at that in conjunction with the real-time data. And we can do that all using Gen AI to help us resolve and help us think through the issue. And finally, the issue is resolved. So we watch the alarms clear, and we watch the system go back to normal and make sure that we're not displaying data that doesn't need to be displayed. So this will be available to you shortly after as an open source project. It's all based on Amazon Bedrock. We have the source code available in a GitHub project, so you can build your own shop floor Gen AI assistant. And I'm sure what you come up with will be a lot cooler than what we've done with just Cookie Factory. So, I think the key takeaways from today, I can't stress it enough. With digital transformation, you've got to be working backwards from your business goals. Align these business goals, shop floor to top floor. Really think about bridging the gaps between that IT and that OT. You have to build a repeatable data foundation, and you have to start with scale in mind. Where are you headed in the future? Just because we're building something now and we think things can remain on-prem doesn't mean that in the future we won't want to take advantage of things like generative AI or machine learning or things like that. We might also want to do site-to-site benchmarking. So in the future, we need to think about that future scale, and we need to build that into the system now. We also have to select the right collaborators. What we mean there is partners. We really believe digital transformation in IoT is a team sport. We work with great partners like Embassy of Things. We work with Siemens. We work with lots of different little ISVs. We've got great architectures called the Industrial Data Framework with lots of different ISVs and partners to bring their special brand of skills to the table. It's so important to pick the right ones. For example, our Mendex Lean Daily Management solution, a great solution because low code is great for the shop floor. Digital twin helps people visualize. So we love these types of relationships, and we love delivering like that. Take a human-centric approach, making sure that we've delivered tools to the right people with the right motivations that are aligned to those business goals, not just, hey, Gen AI seems like it's cool, let's try to push that into the shop floor. We have to find the right way to move those technologies and to use those technologies as true enablers of our people and make sure that they can achieve their business goals using that technology. And finally, don't be afraid to embrace the future. Building in scale, building in terms of what does the next 30 years look like? What does the next 40 years look like? We should all be super aware of it in this space because we're all dealing with equipment that's 30 years old as it is. Wouldn't it have been nice if somebody back then had said, hey, what about 30 years from now? What should I be thinking about, right? So you have that ability. You could do that today. Don't forget it. Embrace the future. Think about that, the life cycle of that plant and that equipment, and embrace that future today. That's it from us. So to learn more about these new features in SiteWise, there's a QR code. Our new offering from AWS and Siemens, I encourage you to see their session tomorrow, Mandalay Bay, 8:30 a.m. And the final QR code, build your own AI-assisted digital twin today. That'll take you to a GitHub repository where that's all open source. So that's it. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming.